Hello and welcome to Women in Tech powered by Bird & Bird. In this podcast series, we are going to hear from inspirational people leading the charge at the forefront of innovation. My name is Martin von Haller Grønbæk and I'm a partner in Bird & Bird's Tech and Comms group based in Copenhagen, Denmark. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Louise Lachmann, General Partner at Ugly Duckling Ventures, also based in Copenhagen. Hi Louise, and welcome to our session.
Thank you, Martin, for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here today.
I think I'll just start with giving a brief introduction to you, and there's so many things we can talk about. Just taking as a point of departure your LinkedIn CV, I think it would be a good idea to sort of have an overview, because you have been part of the tech scene here in Denmark, and I guess also we could say the Nordics, since you were part of dotcom companies. Then you moved to .org, now .ai and .vc. So you've been on a journey from the very start, and to a large extent, it's been the same period as I've been part of the scene. So it's really exciting for me to have this discussion, because it's also bringing back a lot of memories. Just to mention, I mean, you started in traditional companies that were internet companies, but soon moved on to forming your own company, which was Mono Solutions. And we're going to talk about that and what that did and how that journey was and how you exited from that. And you've also been part of a number of institutions, and you're presently chairperson at the Danish Foundation for Entrepreneurship, which is also an important topic that we should touch upon in this podcast. And maybe finally, which is, I guess, what you do most of your time, is that you're a general partner at the Ugly Duckling Ventures venture company, or angel investing, or seed investing, or whatever we should define it as. But that's also something that we'll be discussing. So this is really exciting, because you can take us through the whole sort of development also of the Nordic Danish-based tech scene over a period, but also, of course, have some interesting diversity perspectives to put forward on that. But without further ado, maybe you could take us back to where it all started.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's actually fun that the two of us are doing this podcast together, as you were the professor that I graduated law school from. You were like already back then, like really a techie person, because you were the reason I got an email address. You weren't sending out any notes if we didn't have an email address. So that maybe also tells a little bit.
When was that actually?
Law and economics. We had law
Okay.
and economics, yeah.
Are
At
we
University
back
of
in the 90s, mid-90s or
90,
something?
yeah, actually before. It's 93, I think 93, 94, something like that, around that time. So maybe 92 was early days. And as you said, I've really like been tagging along like the digital space, which has evolved over the time. So if you go back in the 90s, where I saw the internet for the first time, and I realized that I had to skip law and go straight into the digital world and the world of internet and all the opportunities. Back then, I think for me, it was a natural segue into also pursuing my entrepreneurial path. I still, even I'm on the investor side, the dark side right now, I still regard myself as a tech entrepreneur. I spent most of my time, adult work life in tech. And as you said and mentioned, I've been through different phases. So in the beginning, everything was .online, and we had to explain to the customers and clients what does HTML stand for and stuff like that. That was crazy days back then. And obviously, the ones that could afford doing anything online was the large corporation and enterprises, because setting up a server back then cost like 10,000 euro to do a campaign site for 2 weeks. So obviously that's how the internet was dominated. And also we didn't have search functions like Google that really disrupted the way we searched. That was Web 2.0. I know that we're very much further ahead down that road right now. That's a little bit like where I started out, like doing on the consultancy side, having an agency that I sold back in 2001. And then following that, actually one of my co-founders from my first agency contacted me and told me that now we were getting too old to sell hours. We should start selling subscriptions. So that was back in 2006, and that must make me really old right now. But I think when we founded the company, which Mono Solutions you mentioned was a B2B SaaS company. And I would say, I mean, I even had a lot of arguments, like we have another Danish veteran in the internet sphere called Tim Frank Andersen that I know you know as well. And we were debating whether this cloud was something that was really worth betting on. Our service was obviously a cloud service because he felt that there was like a really good opportunity to have everything on a CD-ROM or even downloadable, etc. So that's really where we started out. And then fast forward till actually cloud did become the predominant way of really also using and leveraging services to where I am today. I sold my company in 2019 to Bauer Media Group and stepped out in 21. And then I've been angel investing since 21. But as you said, I started or stepped in now as a full-time partner, a GP, in the venture fund called Ugly Duckling Ventures, where we do early stage investments in B2B subscription businesses. So something very close to my heart.
Can you explain a little bit more about what was Mono about? I mean, you said it was a cloud-based software as a service firm, but what was it actually doing?
Well, maybe a little bit of the Robin Hood thinking. Like we've been like helping large corporations. We did lots of like strategy and consultancy work for big brands. We did Aarhus Kommune's website, and we did a lot of like work for large corporations. But we felt there was a need for small businesses to be visible online. And thinking back 2007, this is pre-social media. So I mean, if you were a small business, you could put an ad in the yellow pages, or you could do maybe a radio spot or local newspapers. This is the way that you would make aware of yourself. So we felt that obviously small businesses should have equal opportunities essentially to connect with their customers online and get found. And part of that was obviously also the way that Google disrupted our search pattern. So going from a listed web, like with the old Yahoo pages, and you were like listing websites, like you could overview the full internet, so you could really list the websites out there. But then when Google came about and you started having the crawling and the spiders, then obviously then also that gave the opportunity for small businesses to also be searchable online. So I think that's really where we started out, and we started as a website builder, and we morphed into more of a marketing platform, full-fledged with e-commerce, booking, email marketing, very similar to Wix, that maybe is familiar to a lot of people. The way we went to market was through partners. We realized that working with small businesses was very different from working with enterprise customers, since I like to say there are three things working with small businesses. I mean, they don't have necessarily the skill set. Why would they have skill set to be professional marketeers when large companies don't have it? They don't have a lot of time because they're very dedicated to their own business, and they don't have a lot of money. So I think for us, we needed to find a way to go to market. So actually, we pivoted. We started as a direct to SMB, and then we set up a whole partner model and network. So worked with some of the largest telcos, local media companies, the old Yellow Pages, and became a market leader in Europe. Had also an office in Denver, Colorado, and Canada was one of our main markets as well.
Maybe we could also touch upon here one thing that you also definitely have experienced. Now that you mentioned that Mono was a software as a service company, cloud-based companies, you could probably also remember a little bit earlier, it was called an ASP, application service provider. This whole thing about not having things running on a centralized server somewhere, but going up to the cloud or being remote. Obviously, the shift from nothing to the internet was gigantic. But I remember also there after the dotcom bubble burst, and you had this idea of going into web apps and software as a service, and it was very, very difficult to get anybody in the normal tech scene here in the Nordics to understand that you could actually supply services over the net. In Denmark, we had you remember, everybody was looking to Navision and Damgaard data that was sold to Microsoft, and that was all about putting software on a diskette and distributed the old-fashioned way. A lot of those companies that have been successful here, like Zendesk and Sitecore and Unity and whatever they're called, had a really tough time persuading both investors and customers that moving to the cloud or ASP at that time was feasible. Did you experience the same thing?
Definitely. I mean, first of all, the whole notion of, because we were really early. I mean, B2B SaaS was not at all sexy. I mean, if I spoke to investors and I talked about SaaS, they thought maybe I was ill. I mean, it wasn't really a thing, right? It was all about the B2C and freemium models and stuff like that. So obviously thinking about from an investment point of view, there wasn't a lot of interest in the space, but even also doing contracts and and working with these large enterprises, some of them even also hosting companies and telcos, which by in nature, that's a service they offer, to put the data on their servers. So what I always put in the contracts was like, this is all fine. You can get going. And we have an API that supports everything. So you can switch at any time. There will be a switching cost, and the switching cost obviously will be more costly for you if you want to host it on your server, but let's not make it a contractual issue. You have the opportunity at any stage to switch over. No, none of them ever did. But I think given just the security that they could, if they wanted to, have a local server running the application and serving them from their own. I think more important was really the whole server setup and the security around how that was really. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the open source or not. I think for us, it was one of our sales argument that we didn't per se have like open source, like WordPress or something like that, because that actually gives up for a lot of security breaches. And it was a big selling argument for us that we hosted it in a secure environment for ourselves. But we definitely support like an open environment. So we had an API first approach to technology. And I think that was really also we were front runners in that end. And that's also what were giving us the opportunity to really like win the market, because having an API first also allowed for our partners to integrate with local services, or especially serving a market like Europe, which is definitely not one single market. You have local payment providers, you have a lot of maybe local booking apps or anything you want to integrate. So for us, we had that open thinking, but through an API.
Did you take any investors in?
I'm a woman, Martin. 1.7% of the capital, venture capital, goes to female founders. No, I think we didn't, and I think I apologize to my partners, but when you had to split the money and when we sold, it was maybe okay. No, I think actually, as I mentioned before, I mean, we were really early days on this whole B2B SaaS journey. So I think we weren't really in flavor for investors. They were looking more to the B2C space and also go into market, because we had to fund ourselves. So since also from a user perspective, the B to direct to SMB approach didn't work. Going through partners actually gave us access to fuel ourselves with working with these large enterprises. So I did, for instance, deals with Swiss companies, and they have a lot of cash, I would say. So they were okay paying me 3 years up front, and then I could migrate a lot of their legacy customers over to a modern SaaS platform. So essentially, I could fuel the growth with selling. And that also made it actually hard for me, because I couldn't present. It was a B2B enterprise. So it's not like you build out a huge sales force outbound or you work with inbound. It's very targeted, named account approach. So even from a scalability perspective, and now being on the investor side, it was hard for me to build a real venture case. But I would say that I actually went out to raise growth capital. So I skipped the venture layer. And in 2018 is where we decided we needed to go and raise some growth capital, because Wix was actually looking to go into our space. And we knew them being listed and being like so much bigger company than ours, that was really like important for us. So that's where we started engaging with growth companies, and also actually found a perfect match for us. Went into DD, and we're actually getting ready to sign. And this is where Bauer Media then approached us. So very like last minute they got in, and we ended up, instead of taking growth capital, we ended up selling the company.
Interesting. After that, that was in 2019. You were acquired by Bauer Media, and since then you've started making investments yourself. And I know also you've been part of some initiatives that were specifically targeted towards enabling more funding to go to female founders. So, I mean, maybe you could take us from your own experience as being a female founder in Mono to what that taught you, and how you think that this should be actually addressed going forward, and the reason why it should be addressed, of course.
Yeah, that's really an interesting way of putting it. Actually, I have never regarded myself as a female founder. I've just regarded myself as a tech entrepreneur and a founder.
Oh.
So I've never actually thought too much about it. I didn't have any business to do in Denmark. I was always flying out, engaging with people otherwise in Denmark. So it wasn't actually before I became part of the Danish Foundation for Entrepreneurship, and they asked me to be part of their microfund grants committee. And they told me, we actually have an issue. It's actually not just in Denmark, but there is an issue. We have fewer female founders, and very little of the capital actually goes to female founders. And you as a role model, should take part of also changing that. And while I was really engaged building Mono, I didn't have any time. I have all the time I had, I put into Mono, and the little left time I had, I put to my family. But I mean, following then the exit, obviously that gave me some other opportunities to also think about the responsibility that I, as a female founder, now I use that terminology, have in terms of inspiring other women to take on that journey and live their own dream, because that's essentially what you do when you're a founder. So today I am involved in both, obviously, Foundation for Entrepreneurship. I recently took over the chair position after Andre left. And I think that's super interesting for me also to work more strategically, politically, because I think that's where I can also move the needle much more. Also, I do investment myself. I don't have per se like I will only invest in female founders. Actually, now I invest only through Ugly Duckling Ventures, and we invest in B2B Nordic subscription startups. So there's not that touch of, I mean, I would love to see more female in STEM, female founders in the STEM, in STEM in general. But I think for me, I have the opportunity working both in the Foundation for Entrepreneurship. I am also an ambassador for an angel network called Angel Invest, which is women angels only. So one of the things that we discuss in terms of how come so little of the capital actually is deployed for female founders, because if we know that there's 1 out of 4 founders that are women and 1.7 or 1.9% of the capital goes to female founders, there's a gap, right? It's if we think that there's an equal distribution between female founders and male founders in terms of scalable, fundable businesses, there might not be, but even if there's still a gap, there's still somewhere a gap from the 1.7 up to how much of the scalable business up to the 25. So, and part of that equation also, a lot of the conversations anyway, is about who are the ones investing. Because sometimes you like to invest, many times actually, you invest in things you feel that you're familiar with, feel comfortable, that you can resonate with, that you understand. So areas like femtech, for instance, women health, maybe it's more difficult as a man to relate, like some of the complications you can have, for instance, giving birth as a woman, that can be difficult to relate to. So I think part of getting more female investors is part of the equation, solving that. I think also understanding how we can put together diverse founder teams. If I look at myself and the way I was the CEO, I was responsible for commercials and a lot of also the HR side, but my 2 co-founders, they were on product design and tech, representing different competences, and I think together we were a perfect founder team, both from competences and from obviously gender diversity. So I think also part of it can also, we should look into how do we create more diverse founder teams across different educations. I think is also where we could potentially see a way to solve that gap that we see right now.
Could I ask, I think it's really, really important what you're doing there, but I see some kind of an interesting question. On the one hand, you put emphasis on that you were never looked at yourself as a female founder. You were just a tech entrepreneur like everybody else. But on the other hand, you think that this is important to emphasize this, even though that you didn't do that yourself. And you also mentioned that there is this tendency to look for things that you can recognize yourself in. But at the same time, you also said that I did never do that when I'm in Ugly Duckling. I don't really think, why is it that, I mean, you obviously seem to be able to thrive in a world where your sex is not really that important and you live with that. But why is it that it's not happening for other people than you? Because you don't seem to have had any role models or had any preferences or anything that sort of put you forward. You had to do like everybody else would have to do at that time. So why is it that this is important now, and why are other people not able to do the same thing?
So if we look at the time when I was a founder, first of all, it's very rarely we hear male founders, isn't it? We talk about female founders. Maybe it's the FF that really sounds very well. But I mean, you're just a founder. And when you're, a founder of a company, and for myself, I was a tech entrepreneur, that's, for me, it was never important. It wasn't really important. And I think it was never something we also discussed, myself and my two co-founders, we had very equal distribution even in our management team. We had 20 different nationalities, we had all ages. We never actually thought about that whole diversity thing because it was just a natural thing. And I think it comes maybe down to the persons. I don't know. It was just never a thing. But it became a thing for me later on because I was made aware of the data. And I think that's really where, as a country, we're losing out of a giant talent pool in this country. And actually, not just in Denmark, it goes for Europe if we look at the numbers. So there's a giant talent pool. Right now, there's a lot of buzz around Europe losing track, and US and China will take over, and it will be really bad if we look many years ahead for innovation, and we will be, falling behind. So if you look at it just from like a high level perspective, why are we not exploiting? Let's talk about resources. So female founders out there, great ideas, and they're not getting funding. So I think that's the first very easy step to which creating a much better ecosystem, but for the benefit of Denmark, for Europe, for the economics on a high level. Obviously, I would also like to see more female founders. I would like the 25 to go up to 50-50 or being representative for how the gender is split. So I think that's another also thing to solve. I think that takes even longer time. In the Foundation for Entrepreneurship, we are right now we have a project going on trying to identify why is it that fewer women or girls, why don't they choose the path to become an entrepreneur? So we have a 3-year project going on with that. And we need to identify first the reasons before we can do anything about it. But I think deploying capital to female founders that have scalable businesses, I think that's an easy win. And this is something that will benefit all of us because we will create jobs and we will create a better economy. So I think that's something we should all be concerned about. And the reason why I'm concerned about it now is because I shifted my focus from being 100% on my business. Yeah.
Could you also say a little bit more about the Danish Foundation for Entrepreneurship? It is a very important institution here in Denmark. It has a long history, but it also has a special focus. So maybe you can say something about what it does and why it's important. I mean, it's a really recognized position to be the chairperson of that group. It's not the same as being the Minister for Digitization, but I would actually argue that it's equally important. So maybe you can say a little bit more about what this foundation is doing and what is its focus.
So definitely happy to do so. I mean, the vision we have and what we set out to do is to make entrepreneurship for everyone. So it shouldn't just be for a few people that accidentally stumble upon it or inspired by maybe someone in their network, their mom or their dad. We want every kid in Denmark to have the opportunity to choose that path. And we interpret entrepreneurship widely. So it's not just, creating a tech startup. It equally also goes for entrepreneurship. So innovation on a broader scale, because I think as a country, it's important for us that we focus on innovation. This is how we're going to continue to be a welfare society, is to innovate. So I think having this as part of our education from an early stage. So that's part of really the focus. So we do a lot of material for schools, programs that the teachers can use when teaching and explaining to kids, like, what is it really like, and embed that into it. We have some programs where we also do some competitions where the young people can engage and present their ideas. So this is obviously super, super interesting. There are some of the programs we're doing right now, the Entrepreneurship Festival coming up soon, is where we will have also nominating some of these young startups. We actually this year became the European master, both for the higher educations and for high school educations. We won both competitions. So I think we can be proud as a country. I think part of also what I've learned also from my own start is we have a good way of thinking. I mean, the way we think as Danes, we don't have very strong hierarchies. So we're okay with challenging consensus. And I think challenging consensus are some of the rules that you need to break to innovate. So if someone asks me, what rules would you like to break? I would like to break conventional rules, because this is how you innovate, is doing something different. So if we can teach our kids to do that, I think by nature, we have a really strong platform in Denmark to really push innovation. So, and also the last part we have these 3 areas, the schools and the programs, and then we have obviously the microfunds. And microfunds are self-funding for student startups. So we give grants up to 50,000 kroner for student ideas. And I've been part of that committee since 2014. And it's been like so amazing to see how these young people have evolved. And I would say they're so strong presenters. And I think part of that has to do with social media. I know we're always bashing on social media. I am myself too, when I think my kids spend too much time on TikTok. But obviously, it's also learned them how to broadcast themselves.
Yeah.
So being able to present themselves, present their ideas. So the quality of these young people coming and presenting ideas where they want to disrupt the world. And I think also in the last years, we've had a big shift towards more sustainable ESG goals, which also speaks to a lot of young people, because obviously they're the ones who's going to live in this world when we look down the road. So obviously some of the ideas are also spawned out of the need to disrupt and innovate in that area.
I think maybe to finish off the discussion about the foundation and the great work that it's doing, is that you could almost argue that it's so successful that people are thinking about, well, yeah, it's fantastic to promote the entrepreneurial or innovative spirit, but come on, there also has to be somebody who's employed in all these startup companies, and we cannot be leaders all. There has to be some followers also. And I've heard at some conferences that some of the companies actually started to talk about that. Yeah, slow down a little bit, because there also has to be some of these young guys and young girls that actually have to go in and work in all of these innovative companies. But I guess the point is here that it's not necessarily to start a company, but to have this kind of non-hierarchical, non-authoritarian, innovative way of speaking, and that is a sort of a way of thinking, and that is obviously something that can be used regardless of you're cleaning the floor or you are an HR manager in a company. You can always think about how to do things in a better way.
Definitely. I think a lot of the innovation we're going to see also going forward will be in health tech, because we'll start seeing a lot of the data available that we can actually also leverage, and we can elevate ourselves in terms of some of the big challenges we have with cancer, a lot of diseases that has been part of the way the world works right now, that we will be able to really solve. I hate waste. I hate waste of food, time, clothes. I hate waste of really clever people. And I think to your thinking of that, we will need hands. Hands, yes. But if we think about minds, and now, I mean, this is a Bird and Bird podcast, so it makes sense maybe to talk a little bit about legal tech as well. I'm also an investor in a legal tech company. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, well, yeah, because I think actually you guys are using it, juristic. But anyway, I think what really for me is important here is that you free bright people from manual work. And I think that's actually a payoff for one of our other companies called UPRI, but they're in temperature compliance and life science. But I think doing stupid work, and I think, I mean, now I revealed my background, so I'm a lawyer by background. I had a few years working in a law firm and doing all these jobs that you get to do when you're just out of school. But I think, you have highly educated people, and some of this will be automated, and some of this will be done in so much smarter way, and we can put our minds to solve the problems that we can't automate, and where we can really drive innovation. That's why I think innovation, and don't think of it as just only startups being a tech entrepreneur, but just on a broader scale, because I think you can innovate and you can be an entrepreneur in a larger corporation, and in that sense also thrive. There will always be the need for hands. I think we won't see robots putting necessarily taking care of our kids or stuff like that. I think there will always be the need for that, but we will see robots taking up over. Now you said cleaning. Hopefully some of the cleaning tasks will be done by robots. Why not? So I think that this is a world where we should just think of how we can elevate ourselves as human, and even put our brains to use in an even better way.
And maybe, I mean, a good way to end this fascinating discussion would be to ask you a little bit about what is happening, in your opinion, within the AI space here in Denmark, and maybe if there are some special angle of this from an Ugly Duckling Ventures perspective. So maybe you could finish our talk with telling a little bit about your vision about the Danish or the Nordic ecosystem within an AI, and what if it's something that you're looking into from your present investor perspective.
For sure. Let me start by from the venture perspective, from Ugly Duckling Ventures perspective, not just ours, but I think if you're on the investor side right now, I mean, we're bombed with .ai business cases and decks, and a lot of it obviously is a little bit the hype that you also mentioned initially. Like we had the hype back then when the internet came. Oh, the internet is so crazy. We can do all these things. Suddenly we have Chat GPT and a lot of what we see are simple wrappers, are not really like profoundly doing anything more than just doing a wrapper on the Chat GPT. But there are also obviously some of the tools that we're looking into, and I mentioned Juristic we've invested into, that are so much more and are really like elevating and leveraging some of this technology that AI also gives us access to minimize some of this manual and trivial task. But I think right now AI is it's like interesting. It somehow is a buzzword, and at the same time also people are like, really AI? So I think as you and I spoke about also, like a little bit like in the beginning, like you had .online and the internet, it was such a buzz. It didn't mean that it wasn't disruptive in a way, and I think we'll see the same thing. So maybe elevating a little bit. I mentioned health tech. I think where we can really see, and I think the investment that we saw that Novo and NVIDIA, supported by IFR, did in Gefion, the supercomputer. I think that's a testament also to us as a country, where we will have access to data on a global level that can fuel back into the companies, also startups, but help solve some of these problems we haven't been able to solve in the last many decades. So I think from that perspective, they're definitely living more sustainable, understanding some of the problems we have to solve in terms of climate, also being more responsible. Definitely, I think. But for me, it's really leveraging technology. It's always been like that, right? It's just such a strong, and I think it's hard to comprehend because there's the generative AI aspect. It's not just AI. I mean, I've been in Mono, we've done machine learning and like really automation for many years in terms of optimization and taking like manual processes out of the equation. But I think really the generative AI perspective is what's really hard for us right now at this point to understand the real implication longer term.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Louise. It's been really great to hear about what's been happening since we talked together the first time after your graduation many years ago until today. Some time has gone, but the enthusiasm and the optimistic attitude is the same. I think it's really great for our ecosystems that we have people like you that has sort of been on the whole journey. And a big thank you to all of our listeners as well. Look out for more great content coming from our Women in Tech, powered by Bird and Bird series very soon. Stay tuned.